I want to bring in Joseph Rojas,
Rojas.
Rojas
Yeah.
of Seventh Day Slumber. Y'all give him a big welcome.
Hey, what's up? It's an honor to be here and super thankful and thank you, pastors, both for having us. And or I say us because my son, who's the drummer for Seventh Day Slumber, is also here in the next room. I think he's eating the cake that you left out.
Yeah,
Yeah, which
yeah, the
is
ice cream cake.
the ice cream cake.
He's just doing his favor before it melts.
Well, that's right. And that's he's just being a blessing.
That's it. That's it, man.
No, it's an honor to be here, and I'm super thankful. Honestly, Pastor was uh, hanging out earlier during before we were going to be playing that night, and so I got an opportunity to sit and or at least stand and talk with him, and man, I just knew right away it's the guy I'm probably going to, we're going to probably do some time together.
That's right. That's right.
So,
We don't find a lot of people that has the heart that we have. Um, you know, I went through Teen Challenge in 1998.
mhm.
Rescued Kenneth from a
Mountain movers.
it was a very corrupt rehab, and I brought him and Robert, the other guy, and another guy, Jeremiah, to my house, and we built them a tiny house to live in the backyard. And they stayed there and till they could get back on their feet. And he's been discipling with me for going on 5 years.
Yeah, February will be 5 years.
And so is Robert. So y'all were right. And Robert, man, he's going crazy. He wanted to be in here tonight, but I just told him there's just not enough room.
Yeah.
But he was just telling us, he said, man, when I was in that rehab, they had me up doing roofing and stuff, and all I played was Seventh Day Slumber the whole
That's
time.
amazing, man.
So
Wow.
you're making a difference in these lives.
I tell you what, that's what it's all about. Hearing stories like that, and just knowing that the music that you're making isn't, it's not just falling on deaf ears. Like I'm I'm thankful that I get to do music ministry. And matter of fact, me and Kenneth, Pastor Kenneth, met over at Winter Jam, which was which is a music ministry, and so and we were able to just have a quick conversation, but at the end of the day,
Well, he clicked that picture
yeah,
and sent it directly to me.
yeah, no, and so we had the opportunity to do that. I was just hanging out, I was just hanging out right there.
And like we were talking about in there, it was crazy how God full circled everything back around.
Yeah.
And, that just shows how God works and how he can work in our lives. I mean, he'll pull everything back around full circle for you.
I say he connects dots.
That's right. No, it's true. But, I write a lot of music because I've been through a lot in my life. I've been through a lot of pain, a lot of tough times, and we can get into that a little bit. But
well, that's why I got you here, brother.
Yeah,
I want that testimony.
I've been through some real rough things in my life, rough stuff in my life, and music was my outlet. So to be able to write music that was it was my therapy. Even before I knew the Lord, that was my way of having some kind of therapy. But to know now that not only is that music making a difference for me and helps me to kind of get things out, but that music is actually helping people, and God is using it to to touch people and to let them know that there is a God who loves them, who has a plan for their life, and that they are not too far gone. They haven't done too much to be out of the reach of God. And sometimes, people maybe even watching right now, and maybe you feel like you are out of the reach of God. Maybe you feel like you've done too much and there's no way you can be forgiven. Man, it's crazy. I never felt like I had any value. I never felt like I had any worth. My own dad wasn't in my life though. He was in my life for a little while when till I was about 3.5, 4 years old. But he used to beat on my mom, and that was my only memory of my dad. It was him beating on my mom, bloody. My brother's a couple years older than me, and so him and I, the last time I even saw my dad was until I met him later on in life. But as a kid, I saw him the last time I saw him. He was on top of my mom beating on her, and I still remember her bleeding. I still remember the sirens, and it's hard to believe this, but it's true because I can't even remember anything at like 5 or 6 years old fun that I did. But at about 3.5, 4 years old, I still remember the anxiety
Mm.
that I felt, the panic that I felt seeing my mom. And I still remember my brother and I yelling, I don't know why we did, why kids say what they say, but I was like, win, mommy, win. And then we were just crying. We were little toddlers. We couldn't do anything to help her. And my dad was arrested, and he got out of jail, got kicked out of the Air Force, um, and we never saw him again after that. No Christmas cards, no, you know. And my mom's, didn't have no money. She's raising two boys on a single mother's income, no child support. Man, the neighborhood we lived in, we were from the hood, man, and so straight up, and so it was a lot that went on, and she finally was able to get us to move to a trailer park. Dude, when we moved to the trailer park, you know how people talk about trailer parks and they go, "Man, I used to live in a trailer." And then I'm like, "Dude, when we moved to the trailer, when we moved to Holiday Acres in Victoria, Texas, bro, I was like, dang, does it even get any better than
Bro,
this?"
I lived in a trailer park for rich people
Yeah.
because it was a trailer park on the lake.
Oh, now ours was Holiday Acres. It wasn't no holiday.
But
There was some acres, but it wasn't no holiday.
but you know what? It had
But
its
to me, it
challenges.
was.
It had its challenges, even though
Yeah,
it was a
yeah,
trailer park on the lake,
yeah,
because all the people I rode the school bus with, all the people I went to school with, was living in $500,000 million mansions all over the lake around me, and here I am
yeah.
over here in the trailer park, and they're like, "Oh, that's the poor white trash over there," and
Shoot.
it's like, yeah, but I'm gonna tell you, man, that trailer park. I told my mom and daddy we ended up being able to buy us a house on the lake. But
Yeah.
you know what? We were never as happy as we were in that trailer.
Hey, listen, that's the thing. It's not about money. It's not about.
Time,
I felt safe in that, and there were people getting hurt in that trailer park,
right?
but I felt safe. I mean, I came from the barrio, dude, like, and then go to the trailer park, and I'm like, man, like this is. I got my own room.
Right?
There's air conditioning in the actual. It's not just one thing in the living room that my mom only turns on about like
When it gets
halfway into
so hot
summer.
you
When
can't
it
breathe.
get halfway into summer, then we can sleep in the living room. No, man, there was air conditioning coming up off the floor and those little vents, on the floor, man. And I was like, dude, I got my own room. This is a trip. But in the middle of all that, no matter how big your house is or your trailer is, no matter how big, how much air conditioning you got or you don't have, how much money is in your account or you don't, it didn't replace not having a dad,
No.
man. And I was broken and I was hurting and I was searching and I was lost and I didn't have anybody to tell me who I was. That's what we are right now. We're a generation who has no identity. We're literally in an identity crisis, and
Bro,
and it's the truth.
it's
And
crazy you're bringing this up
yeah,
because I had it out with my 18-year-old today, who's the youth leader here, works with Kenneth and Brandy, his wife, and I bought us some iron-ons, had them made up. That's what I did. It says I identify as a child of God.
mm,
And he was like, "So, Dad, why you had to put identify? I identify." I was like, "Well, he, I didn't mean it derogatory, but you got boys identifying as girls and girls identifying as boys, and some of them identifying as a cat and a dog and all this other stuff."
hmm,
And I was like, "Let's just simplify it. I identify as a child of God."
yeah.
And I was like, it wasn't meant to be like in somebody's face. It's just saying, I'm proud that I am a child of God.
Well, you have a lot of people that just don't know who they are,
Right.
and man, it's easy to because I feel like when we have situations like, just take this for instance, the issue of the day, whether it's men swimming in women's sports or those kinds of things. Yeah, those kinds
Boxing.
of things. It's easy to like to get upset and to post something. Man, me, I have to remind myself that there are broken people who just have never had anybody speak into their lives. Never
Love
had
them.
anybody to hold them and tell them who they are. Speak into their life. To me, like I said, my own dad. I'm sitting here as a young man. My mom's trying to raise two boys into men,
Yep.
and she never been a man. She don't know how to.
Right.
It's like And so that's the thing. Is like, man, you're trying to raise two boys, and you're like, how in the world uh, can I be a dad to these two boys?
She went
And
through it
yeah,
before they met.
It's
yeah.
well, right before we got married, I was a single father of a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She was a single mother of two boys.
He's pointing. He's talking about his wife who's running the camera. You
Yeah,
guys.
she's right over there.
So it was kind of like, you know, your music. This is something that I want you that I don't think because it never got mentioned. Your music, her boys, they never had a man in their life,
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't raised in church.
Mm.
Her oldest son is really big into rock music.
Mm.
Your music, because the sound that it is, it's Christian music, but it gave me a way to bridge that gap with her oldest son.
Oh wow.
And I just understand that, like, there are parents out there that are using your music as a way to connect with their children
Man.
who may not be brought up in the church, and kind of like how our kids were.
Yeah.
They weren't brought up in a church, but they have the worldly music, and then all of a sudden their parents get sober, and now they're all of a sudden they're in a church. But we're able to bridge that gap with Seventh Day Slumber,
Man.
Magdalena Rose, and all that
That's
stuff.
that's that means a lot to me, and I appreciate y'all both, and it's wild though, like because this is the world we live in, and so
Yeah.
there has to be a voice of reason,
Mm-hmm.
and but that voice of reason has to come in a way that is I don't want to say see because I don't like it when people say, well, man, it has to always be palatable for people. I don't agree with the fact that it always has to be palatable for people, but I also think that there's a way to speak to people and to talk to people that they want to hear you out,
Right.
and so
Ephesians 4:29.
yeah, exactly. And the truth is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Amen.
And that's been said for many, many years. And
Yeah.
I thought it was just some cool stuff to say to somebody, but it's true, man.
Yes.
It's true. And so
Relationship.
yeah, and so for me, I grew up in an identity crisis, not knowing and mine was more obviously, I'm trying to be a man in the either the trailer park or the hood. I still going back and forth wherever, got friends and that kind of thing, and friends in low places, you might say. And so at the end of the day, my mom finally was able to buy a home. She and it was she saw this her dream was to have a brick home. Like that was her dream. Not a big home. Don't get it twisted.
Just brick.
Just a brick home.
Right.
That was hers. And my mom saw this. Man, it's a story in here itself. But I'll just be real quick on this. But she saw this rundown. It was brick, and it was in a neighborhood. It was in a decent little neighborhood. Um, but it was run down. I mean, inside all the electricity, the wires had been all the wire had been stolen, and all the and it got robbed blind. They ripped that thing apart. But my mom saw beauty in that rundown building, and boy, that's a whole that's a whole sermon right there. But my mom saw beauty, and everybody around her, my uncles, my and I'm Mexican, so I got somebody who knows how to fix houses. But they even told her, this ain't it. This ain't it. And my mom said, no, man, this is my home. And my mom, she bought that home, and she got a steal on it. It was a home that she wouldn't have been able to afford if it was when it was built. And so she got that home, and my mom started putting work into it, and she started doing a lot of stuff herself.
Put the love into it.
Yeah. And so I ended up seeing my mom. She is still an inspiration to me, but my mom did a lot for us, but she couldn't, she couldn't
show you how to be a man.
couldn't show me how to be a man. And so I grew up looking for a lot, and I ran the streets, man. I ran with a lot of people from my old neighborhoods.
It is so crazy you're here, dude, because like we have a men's retreat that we go to every year.
Yeah.
We hosted. We got gifted a house on the lake in the mountains of Kentucky.
Mm.
Every year, it's designated for us at this certain time in October. And this year, we're taking all of the young men and our youth,
Mhm.
and the theme is "Man Up for God."
Yeah.
And our hope is to so man.
Well, I mean, there's a difference in being a man
Well, let me
and
finish
being
here,
a man
Kevin.
of
Hold on.
God. Like
When
Yeah.
I grew up with bikers,
Mm-hmm.
and a real man could fight.
Yeah.
A real man could drink.
Mm-hmm.
A real man had all the women.
Mm-hmm.
No, that ain't a real man.
Yeah.
And so our thing in my sermon, because each of us teach, we have 3 Bible studies a day while we're there. We do breakfast, Bible study, then go to the woods or wherever to find God alone.
Mm-hmm.
Lunch, same thing. Dinner, same thing. But then afterwards, we fellowship together and teach together.
Yeah.
And my thing is this: I want to teach them. This is what the Bible considers to be a real man.
Yeah.
And I've told all the people teaching, this is our focus, is how to be a real man of God.
Yeah.
Because society twists that what's a real man bad.
Yeah. No, it's true.
And it cost me everything, prison time, on top of prison time, gang life, addiction, trying to be a real man, trying to be wanted, needed, and accepted, which is innate in all of us, which truly means just trying to be loved and
Yeah.
accepted by society
Yeah.
instead of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, that's the same thing. You know, I grew up. I've been locked up from Texas to California and places in between, and somebody's institution, somebody's facility, where I didn't even have a name anymore. I was just a number. And you know, when you don't feel like you have any value anyway, a number doesn't bother you.
No.
It don't bother you being inmate number so and so, because you don't really feel like you deserved any better anyway. Like, this is really this is who I am.
Right.
And that's how I felt. I started using drugs and alcohol when I was about 12 years old, something like that. But and I became a full blown drug addict by 14. Started selling dope. You know, at the age of 14, you know, like I said, I started using it early on, but started getting into selling dope at 14, and being from Texas and South Texas, you know, that's pretty much, there's dope running right from Mexico all the way up to Houston. And we were right there on Highway 59 where it came up through. So there was drugs everywhere. I was in trouble constantly. My mom, an amazing woman, but she didn't raise us in a Christian household. You know, she would take us to church. We went to a Catholic church like 2 or 3 times a year when it was Easter and like Christmas mass. You know,
Creaster.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
He was a
And
creaster.
so we go and that was the thing. But my mom, when I got locked up in big boy jail when I was 18. Before that, you know, I'd been into
County,
just
state.
different, well, like juvenile stuff.
Oh, okay.
Until when I was 18, it ain't the same. You ain't going to no charter behavioral center.
Right.
You know, you're going to jail, and you ain't the biggest
Baddest
toughest
dude
guy.
on the
And
team.
no, so I got locked up. It was I was about 18, something like that. But my mom was looking for help for me so desperately. She ended up finally going to church with this lady who went to the crazy church down by down
Holy
by the
Rollers.
airport. Yeah, they raised their hands. You know, when the music played or when the preacher was preaching, they do stuff like this, and they were considered the crazy church down by the airport. My mom went and had an encounter with Jesus. She had an encounter with a living God, and you know, it's one thing. It's one thing to believe in God. Like, people believe in God all over the world. Yeah, I believe in God. Yeah, I believe in God. I believe there's a heaven. I believe there's a hell. I believe in God. It's one thing to believe in God. It's another thing to know God, and yet it's another thing to have experienced Him
An
for
encounter.
yourself.
Mhm.
And so I know people that believe in God all day long, but they've never experienced Him for themselves. And my mom had an encounter and experienced a living God. And she would come to visit me in jail, and And I'd watch this lady get patted down like a dog. I'm talking about a lady who never did nothing to nobody. A lady who never broke. She don't even speed. And,
Don't even jaywalk.
yeah, she don't even jaywalk, man. And she is getting patted down by the sheriffs and everything to come and see me, talk to me on this nasty phone through this glass, and she would smile, and she would smile and tell me, she loved me, but that God had a plan for me, and I'm like, I'm a worthless drug addict. I'm a criminal, man. And my mom would say, when God looks at you, he doesn't see a worthless drug addict. He sees the apple of his eye, his son, who he loves so much. And man, that was hard for me to understand. People do a lot of, and I'm guilty of it, but people do a lot of, it's Christianese. We talk in the Holy Ghost terms, and when we're talking to people, and it's okay because that's when we're talking to other Christian folks, we can speak that language. But when you're talking to folks on the street and we're talking in these different kinds of ways, we're manifesting, and the Holy Ghost is that people are like, I don't know what you're saying, dude. Like,
Right.
talk to me like a normal human
Yeah, that's
being, bro.
great.
Like, what do you even mean right now? I don't know what the Holy Ghost is. Abba, Father. What is an Abba? I don't even have a concept of a father. And you're talking to me about some Abba Father. I don't even know who that is. I don't know what that is. It's crazy to me, and I don't want to hear it.
Got to dial it back.
Not to mention, you're telling me about a father, God the Father, God the Father, God the Father. Now, I believe that God is the Father, obviously. But when you're telling me about God the Father, God the Father, God the Father, to me, I don't have a concept of what a father is. So you're trying to sell me on something that left me, that cheated on my wife, cheated on his wife, beat on my mom. You're trying to sell me on a concept that already destroyed my self-image, that already abandoned me. I'm not buying what you're selling. And so when we talk to people in terms of like holy roller terms or Christianese, which I love and I think is great. We just got to know the areas and who we're talking to, because sometimes, like, forget all of that, dude. Just talk to me like I'm a person, man. I need somebody to talk to me like I'm a person. But that being said, there are people that talk like holy rollers, and you know what? Those are the people that were there for me when I was broken and empty,
And nobody else
and
was.
nobody else was. And they're talking all kinds of stuff. I don't understand it, but when I made the decision to take my life, so I ended up a drug addict, man. Like I was talking about that. I ended up, man. I had about $400 a day cocaine addiction. I finally lost. I couldn't sell dope no more. I lost everything. I owed money to people you don't want to owe money to, and you know what I mean. Like, you come up missing.
Oh, we know.
Yeah, and you know what it is, and it also takes one to know one. I've been on both sides of that, from selling dope to being a dope fiend. You know what I mean? And then I ended up homeless on the streets of Austin, and my mom would tell me, she would tell me to come back home. And I never felt
Proud.
I couldn't do it, man. Well, I just this is an amazing lady, an amazing woman, and I'm a piece of trash, is how I saw it. You
Well, you
know?
went from being a dope dealer to a hope dealer.
Yeah. Well, exactly, like that. That's the truth, and that was a process.
Shoot.
It was a process. But I remember, making the decision to finally just end my life, and and I attempted suicide, and it was the third time I'd actually attempted suicide. My mom doesn't even really know that. She's probably gonna be watching this, but it was because I growing up, it's not something we talk. You don't talk about your feelings like
Right.
that,
Yeah.
especially in a like in a Mexican household. Like, you don't really, and not that it's really that much different from any other household from the old school days. Like, you don't put your business out on the streets. You put my
Right.
business out on the streets.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you keep your mouth shut, and then you don't talk about, I'm thinking about taking my life. You just keep that to yourself. So I didn't even tell my mom for a long time. I didn't even know I made an attempt to commit suicide. She thought I just overdosed on dope.
Bro, there's so much time. My time, my mama didn't even know I was in jail. I
Yeah,
was just MIA.
yeah,
You know,
no,
because
exactly.
I wasn't going. First of all, my first encounter with jail, I was 18 years old, and being stupid, had to be the bad guy, and jerked the guy out of his truck and just pulverized him. And I didn't know the cops were sitting across the street watching.
Oh yeah,
And so that was Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and so I got put in jail. And they kept coming to me going, "My dad was mean, dude. I mean, my dad, he was mean, and he always told me, if you ever get put in jail, don't call me.
mm-hmm.
I'm gonna put it on you."
Yeah.
And so they would come to me and say, "We need to call somebody." I said, "No, you don't. You need to, we need to call." "No, you don't. I'll sit right here, however long you want me to sit, but don't you call my parents."
Yeah.
But I was like that too.
Rather do my time.
My mom has found out more about my past
Yeah.
since I started preaching, because when I preach, I'm real and raw.
Yeah.
And I let them know, if God can do this for me, uh, He can do it for you.
Yeah.
And I'll preach. And that night, my mom, "Well, I didn't know, or
Yeah.
I failed you, or something." "No, you didn't. This was God has us go through everything. He didn't make us go through it. He allowed us to go through it,
Yeah.
and we just like the what's her name? For times like these."
For such a time as this.
Yep. God created, and man, I'll be sitting there and I'll be counseling with somebody that's in addiction, trying to get them to go into a rehab. And I hear God saying, "You went through everything you went through for times like these."
Yeah.
And I tell these guys here, I said, "Listen, when somebody wants to give you testimony, you pray before you give your testimony, because the same people that want you to give your testimony, as soon as you do something they don't like, they'll turn around and burn you to the ground with your own testimony."
Yeah.
And so you got to be careful how much detail you put into your testimony.
Oh yeah.
And like, I'm like you, man. My mom, I wasn't. No, my mom she raised me up till I was probably 10 years old by herself.
Yeah.
And she had a job in a man's world, and she got abused. She had me in the 60s, when that wasn't a single mom in the 60s, man.
Yeah.
You was kicked to the curb.
Mm-hmm.
And she suffered that shame and everything, and always provided for me and gave me the best of everything she could give me, so that the other kids wasn't picking on me for not dressing like them or whatever.
Yeah.
She would go without. I get you. I get you. You're not gonna dump on that.
No, and you're right, man. There'll be people that use your past against you, and at the end of the day, I had to come to a place where I was like, I'm just going to tell it. I'm going to tell it how it is. And although I will say, and some of my Christian friends still give me a hard time about this, but I won't get it all into it, but I will say, when I first became a Christian, I wanted to confess. I went to a Catholic. I went to a priest that's bound by, that they can't go to the police. Like,
Right.
real talk, like that's the kind of stuff we're talking about right now, and I'm not gonna get into it, but I had to literally I went to a priest, man, and and like, just not even not even because of the clerginess of it, but because I needed to say something to somebody.
It's like, bro, sometimes when I'm preaching,
I had to get something off my chest.
Sometimes when I'm preaching, if it's real hard, I'll just go like this and say, "Just in case they right."
Yeah.
I want all bases covered.
Well, God has restored me, redeemed me, but it took me in the back of an ambulance after a suicide attempt. My mom was the one that found me, and she walked in unexpectedly. She's the one that rescued me off the streets of Austin, Texas, and brought me home. She found me on the streets of Austin, Texas, but I never felt right, and I was living in an alleyway.
A shame, man.
But I never felt right, and I made a decision to take my life. Mom was the one that found me, but in the back of an ambulance, I had that encounter. I had an encounter with a living God. I had an encounter with Jesus, and I couldn't speak. I had tubes and stuff, but my chest was like oh man, it was bad. But my heart cried out to God, and it was my soul that cried out to Him, and I gave my life to the Lord in the way that I knew how.
Right.
And I woke up in an intensive care unit in the ICU, and there was this guy that came to visit me. His name is Lowell, and he was the youth pastor of a church that my mom started going to, that little church by the airport, crazy church. And
the crazy church.
Yeah. Well, I'm crazy like that now, but anyway, but my mom,
crazy church.
but my mom, she called him, told him about it, and that youth pastor came. He sat with me, and dude didn't look nothing like me. He seemed like he had some good credit. You know what I mean? And he like he could get a bank loan today.
Right.
They're gonna kick a Mexican out. I'm gonna walk in there, and they're gonna,
you want what?
They're gonna put the shields up. So I was born with bad credit. My last name is Rojas. You know what I mean? So anyway, But I seen this guy look like he got a retirement plan already at 23 years old. But dude, let me tell you something about this guy. Probably he didn't come from the same background I came from, but I'll tell you what, that guy did something that nobody ever did for me. He just sat with me. Dude didn't even say nothing. I mean, he told me who he was. He just sat with me. He sat with me in the middle of my pain.
Mm.
He sat with me when I was hurting. He sat with me when I felt lost. He sat with me when I didn't feel like
Why you
I
here,
even had
dude?
a right to be in the presence of God, a God that I had just given my heart to in the ambulance, because I felt him. But I didn't know nothing about him. I just felt him. I knew it was him. And I'm not talking about rubbing the Buddha belly or any Hare Krishnas. And I'm talking about Jesus. I had an encounter with by name, Jesus Christ. And and I'm not trying to disrespect anybody. I'm just saying there is one name, man. And that
That's
name
it.
is above all names. And I'm telling you, um, it was Jesus. But to have this man come sit, he just sat with me. I was there for a few days, and he sat with me, dude. And we didn't really talk much about a lot. I don't remember. I mean, we probably did, but I don't remember it. It wasn't anything
Were you asking him
significant.
why?
I don't even know what I was. That's what I'm saying. The only thing I really remember, it wasn't the conversation. What I remember was that man sat with me in my time of need.
Right.
And I don't know, we probably talked about a bunch of stuff. I can't remember it. And that's what I'm telling you though. It's not about what you say. Now, sometimes it is. I mean, sometimes it is, but it's not about what you say. That man was there.
He was
And
showing you love of the Father.
yeah. And man, I'm telling you that was it. That was it for me. And then he began to mentor me. After all of that, he sat with me. He earned the right to speak into my life.
Mm-hmm.
He earned that right. Now, sometimes you don't have that time to, you got to tell somebody something. God tells you to say something, you go say it, and you trust the Holy Spirit EQ how you say it and what you say. And there's times I don't say things right, but then
Amen.
and I go and I'll be like, my wife's like, I don't know if you said that right, and I'm like, I don't know. It seemed like they were touched by it, and it was like God EQ'd what I was saying and translated in the way He wanted it, because He's the one that told me to go speak to that person. But my point is that there are people watching and what you guys do here, and this is someone sitting with them, and it may be through the cameras, but y'all are taking the time. You don't make no money doing this. It costs you money to do this. I know that. I know it. It costs you money to be out here doing this, man. It takes time,
Well,
and
the most
that's
valuable
it.
thing in the world?
Yeah,
Time.
yeah.
You don't know
It
how much
is.
you
That's
got
why they
left.
take it from you when you go to prison.
Right.
They don't take your arm or your leg. They
No.
take time.
And
Yeah.
I tell everybody, my first real ministry was Davidson County Department of Corrections. And people say, where'd you go to seminary? Davidson County Department of Corrections.
Yeah.
I was doing 36 one-on-ones a week and 2 chapels. And these guys were asking me questions that I didn't know. And as I say, I'm not going to give them BS, which is biblical stupidity.
Yeah.
I'd say, I'm coming back next Tuesday. I'll have you an answer. And I had me a pad. I wrote it down. And I would have to go home and research every one of their questions. And that was my seminary.
Yeah.
Was done in there with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the fact I had been locked up and I knew what it was like, because they tell me don't hug them or nothing like that. I'm sorry, I'm a hugger.
Yeah.
I go in there, I hug them, and I know what it was like for another man to come in there, didn't know me, didn't have to be there, hugged me with no motives, ulterior motives, just wanted to just show me the love of the Father. And so I wanted to repay that and be that guy. And like, man, they would test me. They would sign to me, and I would sign back, because y'all don't know, it ain't never been. They got their own sign language in prison, and
Yeah.
they would test me to see where I'd been to jail. They would test me to everything, and I knew if I ever once told them I was coming and didn't show up, I was going to be like everybody else in their life that let them down.
Yeah.
And so I didn't care if I was sick, if whatever, I would call the chaplain at the jail and I say, you need to go to him, tell him I'm deathly sick, that I didn't forget about him. I will be back next week.
Mm-hmm.
Just so they know I didn't abandon them like everybody else in their life did.
Yeah, no, it's exactly that's the thing, man. My mom was the only one to come see me when she could. Like I was locked up in Los Angeles as well, and my mom's in Texas, and she couldn't see me. I got that one phone call, and then it was only one phone call a week.
Right.
And so now you can actually use the phone.
All the time.
It's like, yeah. I was like, what?
And they got iPads.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I know. I'm telling you, we just played a prison. It was just crazy that they. I was praying to God I was going to be able to walk back out of that place because anytime I ever walked in, I wasn't able to walk back out.
No.
But we just played
I
a
got
prison.
a story for you on that.
They allowed us. So we now work with a prison ministry, and we go and we speak to prisons all across the United States, and so we're going to put on a concert actually in Angola, and they're allowing it, and they're letting us to be able to do it. But anyway, we were in Tennessee, the maximum facility here, and they literally allowed us to put on a full blown Seventh Day Slumber concert. Talking about the favor of God to allow it, and now I don't want to get anybody in trouble, so I won't go any further as to how cool it really was. But man, there are pictures that are on online by the prison ministry. They got permission to post these pictures. At least you see hundreds of men in this field. It's probably like 3 or 4 guards, maybe at the most.
Wow.
And here we are on a stage,
Pyros.
big LED wall, the whole thing. Maggie is there, which
Right.
this is a male facility, and she played before us, and it was amazing. Everybody was super respectful. These guys in a maximum security prison, super respectful. And and I gotta say, it takes one to know one, man. Like I was able to share and talk
Again,
about,
for
like,
times like these.
I was you.
Yeah.
And now look where I'm at.
Yep.
You think
Yep.
God doesn't love me any more than he loves you. I may be better looking, but at the same time, that's not true. But anyway, man, it's like, no, God doesn't love me any more than he loves you. And like this kid, God has plans. I'm telling you right now, watching, because I know there's somebody watching right now and you've been locked up, or maybe you've never been to prison in your life, but you've been to prison. You've been to prison here. You ain't never walked in, been behind bars, but
Oppression.
but you are in prison. And there are people behind real bars that are more free than some of you watching right now. And God wants to rescue you. He wants to deliver you from that cell that's in here. And I know what it means to be free. I know what it means to be, man. I ended up going back to jail. Like, so I ended up becoming a Christian, and I ended up going back to jail as a Christian. Like, I went to Bible college after I got saved. I was like, dude, that's it. Everybody's gonna get saved now, man. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna see everybody's life change. Just because I wasn't using cocaine anymore, I thought I was like, I'm not using cocaine anymore. I'm good. My mouth wasn't cleaned up, my whatever. But I was like, I ain't getting high no more. I ain't selling dope no more. I ain't running the streets no more. I'm not locked. I just got out. I'm good, man. Like, everybody's gonna get saved. And I went to Bible college. Probably not the smartest. I got kicked out of Bible college. I went to Christ for the Nations in Dallas, Texas, and so I got kicked out, right, because I was not acting right, and I wasn't acting presidential. You know what I mean?
You out the street, but didn't take the street out you.
No. I wasn't acting presidential. You know what I mean? And so I got kicked out, and I was like, dude, whatever. And I ended up going back home. I ended up getting back on dope, like not for getting kicked out of Bible college, but because I hadn't been discipled the way I needed to be discipled. Like, discipleship is so powerful, so it's a must. Go ahead, Pastor Ken.
The one thing that from my sobriety, one thing that I've learned is the moment you think, I got this, that's where the mistake's going to come in at. That's where you're going to slip and fall, and you're going to go right back down that rabbit hole.
Oh, yeah.
And still to this day, I don't got this. God's got this.
Yeah.
God's had this the whole entire time.
Yeah.
It's just been, me trying to fight him up until that point.
Yeah.
when I realized that. And then once I realized that and knew, I ain't got this, God's got this, that was the full submission. And, you know, that's
Yeah.
where everything changed.
Well, that's it, man. You start getting complacent, and I got kicked out. I was like, I don't need these people, man. Me and God are good, whatever.
Yeah.
And I stopped hanging around people that could encourage me or lift me up or whatever. And I ended up going back to Victoria, Texas, from Dallas, and ended up back out. I borrowed a car without asking, kind of thing, and uh, and I got arrested for it, and so it violated me. So here I am back in there. Well, the person's car it was somebody from my mom's church. It was a girl that I used to mess around with back in the day, and I hung out, and they ended up taking her car and her credit card, and and got and the
Went
rest
on a
is hitting.
vacation.
Yeah, a little time that came with that, and here's the thing. I went and I was just talking about being locked up, being free, being locked up, either behind bars or in here. Check this out. So I get locked up. Then when I'm locked up, I decided to go to church. It was the first time I'd ever been locked up and went to church. Because church is usually for usually people want to pass contraband in church or whatever. I mean, that's why you would go to church. I never really had no need for that. I mean, it was anything I wanted was there
Right.
in all around me, and
People
whatever
don't understand that.
whatever jail I was in, whatever facility I was in. So here I really wanted to go to church. And the church that would put on the service was my mom's the crazy church down by the airport. And so anyway, the girl's dad was one of the ministers. Um, he was the one that actually headed up that church ministry. I didn't know that. I don't know if you got kids. You got kids.
Mhm.
Yeah, you got a daughter.
Mhm.
Somebody messes with your daughter.
Mhm.
It's on, right? Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I got three sons, and you mess with my sons, and I love the Lord. I still may put hands on you. I'm not trying to
Don't
say
lay hands
that
on
I'm
you.
no. Yeah,
I'll pray for you
I
afterwards.
no, like it's like my kids mean everything to me because I told you I grew up with their dad. This is his daughter.
Right.
I stole her car. I stole her credit card and spent. I mean, she had a little savings
Good
in there.
credit.
She had good credit. and a good last name and everything, and it didn't roll the R's.
Right.
No, but anyway, I took thousands from her, and so and I'm ashamed to say this, that I did that because I did someone dirty, especially someone that trusted me, right?
Mhm.
But her dad, instead of putting hands on me like that, he hugged me and he began to minister to me on Sundays.
Yeah, showed you the love of the Father.
Yeah.
Something you was missing.
Whenever it wrecked me, dude. It wrecked me. I didn't understand it at first.
when they came when they came out of the rehab and came to live with my wife and I, you know, my wife and I gave them their first Christmas was the best Christmas they'd ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Birthdays, sober dates.
Yeah.
We celebrated sober dates. My wife gave them home cooked meals every day. And they kept saying, "Why are y'all doing this? Y'all don't even know us. Why are you doing this?" And I was like, "We love you."
Yeah.
Well, why? How? They just could not comprehend that somebody did not want something in return.
Yeah.
That they just wanted. They would ask me all the time, "How can I repay you?" I said, "Go be successful, follow Christ, and live a good life. That's how you repay me."
Yeah.
And they could not get that for nothing in this world. And all I was doing was I was doing for them what I wanted somebody to do for me when I was going through it.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
you
you're right.
Like you were talking about your dad. My dad was present in my life,
Mm.
and he hadn't seen my daughter since she's 15 now. Hadn't seen her since she was probably a year old.
I'm a grandpa now.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and
It's awesome.
the only time I hear from him now, still, and it's still hard, but still, the only time I hear from him is, "Can you come help me jack up my house?" Or, "Can you come do this?" And I'm like, "Really? I haven't talked to you in 4 years."
Yeah.
Or called me. I remember when we were at his house, he called me drunk. Said, "Well, you get the alcoholism from your mom's side of the family." "Well, I'm not an alcoholic, Dad. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, and you've done had 5 rum and cokes."
Yeah. No, I mean,
So I mean, sometimes it's kind of like the back of your shirt says. Well, family isn't.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
blood is.
Blood doesn't make us family. Loyalty. I forgot what the back of my shirt says,
Like,
but
blood
to
doesn't make
make
us
it true.
family loyalty does.
Yeah,
And that's kind of like what Pastor Chris
blood
was
makes
like.
us related. Loyalty makes us family.
Yeah,
Right.
it's kind of
Yeah,
like Pastor Chris. He showed me.
put me on the
The,
spot right there.
I was trying to think of it because
Yeah,
we was reading it out there. But
yeah,
Pastor Chris did. He showed me kind of like I keep saying to you. He showed
yeah,
you the love of the Father. He finally showed me the love of the Father,
yeah.
and that's it was a wild concept. I mean, even at the age of 40, I was 40 at the time. Even at the age of 40, I was just kind of like,
That shows that pain is universal.
yep,
Like we started in different places,
mm-hmm,
but pain, your hurt is just as real as my hurt,
yep,
and your hurt is just as real as my hurt, and their hurt is just as real as our hurt. And maybe it's I failed a math test, and I'm afraid to tell my parents because I don't want to let them down. And I know people that have thought about taking their life because they didn't want to let their parents down. Their
Right.
parents were everything. Their parents' approval, just to even hear their dad once say they're proud of them, or they're any of that stuff. Like and so to where somebody was like, man, that's all you went through is a math test that you didn't want to take. You don't know what that
yeah,
That right.
boy
I
or
reckon. I
girl
reckon.
what it did to them. But I can tell you this, that I ended up changing my life, gave my life uh, I gave my life back over to Christ. God never walks away from us. It's us that walk away from Him.
Right.
And so I ended up like in that jail cell, state jail at the time. And so I wasn't in prison. I was in state jail, and I only had a year. I could do a year, so I did my time. I did my little time, and I stayed. I kept my nose clean, literally and figuratively, But and that began the journey of Seventh Day Slumber. I got out and I said, I'm going to go finish this thing because I had already started Seventh Day Slumber in Bible college the first time, but thank God it didn't really like take off. And then I go get locked up. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I was able to meet my wife Lori. We've been married 25 years, and God has changed my life. I'm the father to my kids I never had. I get to hang out with you guys. We got to do an event together
Right.
where God was able to use us to partner in ministry, along with other folks, and lives were changed. And you and I got to be at a ministry event where
Mhm.
lives were being changed, and it's just like, dude, this is what God does. This is who God. This is God is not only able, He wants to. He wants to do this in your life.
You know what really hit me the night that we were up at Soul Stock is God's been really just pouring into me about the kids, about the kids, about the kids. The kids aren't getting Jesus. Their parents don't know Jesus, so they're not getting Jesus. And I baptized 10 people in that
Hmm.
little kiddie pool, and every one of them was a kid. It was from 8 to 18.
Yeah.
And the year before, I baptized 18, and half of them were adults. We had 7 rededicate their life to Christ
Hmm.
that year. But it was crazy because not one adult came forward after I preached. It was all kids.
Yeah.
I think that's I wholehearted. So you don't know this about me, but Pastor Chris does.
Hmm.
I grew up here
In
in
Madison,
Madison.
Oh wow.
where we at.
I grew up here. When I got out of the rehab, I told everybody, you can't pay me to go back to Madison.
Yeah.
This
And the
is his
night,
Nineveh.
yep,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
night he called me with the address, me and her pulled up here, and I just looked at her. And, this is it. I knew right then before we even signed paper. I don't even think he had seen the building. I knew this was it.
Yeah.
But I feel like God's telling me now, you helped mess this up as a kid. It's time for you to clean it up.
Oh yeah.
And the kids in these neighborhoods, especially like through here in Madison, because Madison's actually kind of like, you got your different spots,
Yeah.
but all of Madison, basically, I mean, it's these kids here. If we don't reach out to them and get them, I feel like a lot of them won't know the love of the Father.
Yeah.
They'll know the love of a drug dealer.
Yep. Well, that's the part you don't know about me. So, like, I was working at Castle Power Sports down the street from us here, and I was selling motorcycles, but that wasn't the only thing I was selling.
Yeah.
A lot of my dirty deeds done dirt cheap was done right here in Madison as well.
Mm-hmm.
And for God to bring us back here after we both done said we wasn't coming back, and you know, I told you the story about how I never asked God where He wanted us to have a church. I just told Him where I wanted it, and it wasn't until I broke down and said, "Put me where you need me." 2 hours later, we got this building.
I came here for dinner one time and decided I didn't want to come back here.
In Madison.
Really?
It was that was kind of a joke, but it was a friend of mine was fighting out here in a mixed martial arts
Silverados.
event. Yeah, yeah.
I know exactly.
So I went. I was actually supposed to be fighting that night, and but I came here. I've only been here. I mean, I've been in Nashville for 22 years. You know, the Nashville area for 22 years. But I came out here to River Gate. You know, and I was like, I just was here 3-4 hours, and I'm like, I ain't coming back. You guys, y'all are stuck here.
Hey, I'll take it.
That's all right. Like you said,
Nah.
we clicked at the thing, and
Yeah.
I knew there was going to be a future. Um, I just wasn't sure of what it was going to look like. And, you know, I'm up anytime y'all want somebody to come with y'all and preach, I'm there.
Yeah.
And like I said, we got stuff coming up here. We want to hope to try to get you guys back here.
Oh man, that'd be awesome.
But real quick, I mean, we're going way over what we usually go. But real
Hey,
quick,
it's a special episode.
this is a special episode. So the night at Soul Stock, you talked about being you and your wife were fixing to go out. You'd been gone a long time or whatever on the road, hadn't seen each other, blah blah. And you passed by this alley, and God had you stop. Will you tell that story?
Yeah. Well, we were on. I think it was 18. I want to say it was like 18 shows. I don't like calling them shows, but concerts in a row that we were playing. And my wife Lori is our tour manager, and she's my best friend in the world. We have three sons together, and this was years and years ago. My kids were little kids, and now they're all three grown men. But I was we were in Austin, Texas. We had played there the night before, and in Austin, I grew up not too far from there. I was excited to be able to have a day off. Really, it didn't really matter where I was having the day off, but it was cool that it was in Texas where I'm from originally. And so my wife and I and the whole band wanted the day off. So my wife and I were going to take our three kids to a restaurant I had never eaten at, but I love their barbecue sauce called Stubbs. Stubbs barbecue sauce, my favorite barbecue sauce. And but I had never eaten at the restaurant. I was like, man, I want to take my wife and my kids to go out to eat to this place, the Stubbs restaurant. And we started walking up to Stubbs, and it was a nice night out, and we were laughing and we were just having a good time, my kids. And I stopped dead in my tracks, and I couldn't move. And I looked to my left, and when I looked to my left, it caught me, and I stopped, and I just I felt paralyzed. I honestly felt like I couldn't even breathe, and I only felt like that one other time before, and it was I woke up and I had a night terror, and I woke up and I forgot what you call it, but like
Paranoid.
no, it was paralyzed, like paralytic, like
Okay.
something where you wake up and you can't move, and I was just
Paralysis.
yeah, it's like paralysis. That's how I felt. That's how I felt looking in to the left of me, and I couldn't move, and my wife grabbed my shoulder. She said, "Honey, you okay?" But to my left, I was staring. Uh, I was staring into an alleyway that I actually used to live in. To my left was the alleyway that I was strung out on dope in. It was the alleyway that I used to dig for trash to find something to sleep on in that alleyway. And the very alleyway was the place where I was the most lost I'd ever been, the most empty I'd ever been, the lowest point of my life in that alleyway. And man, my wife like uh, touched my shoulder, and I looked over at her. She said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm good." And I saw her and my three kids. And it was crazy because to the left of me was the worst parts of my life. Worst parts, and I've been through a lot. That was the worst parts of my life. And then to my right was the very goodness of God. To my left, I was looking at the most corrupt, evil, empty, hollow part. And to my right, I'm literally looking at who God is. And man, the contrast, sometimes things have to be contrasted like that
Right.
for you to really understand. I'm an artist, not just singing, but I do art, and I'm also a tattoo artist. So
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that.
yeah. So contrast is a very big thing. I'm a black and gray artist, so you got to have contrast to make.
Right.
You don't have all the other colors, right? But anyway, but the point that I'm trying to make is this: that with that contrast, you can see the lighter areas so much better. And I looked over at my wife and I was like, God didn't just isn't just able. That's what I was saying earlier. This is where I'm getting this from. Like, God is not just able. He is able. God is able. But God isn't just able. Like, he wants to. God, man, he's not just capable of doing these things in my life. He's not just capable of healing me and restoring me and redeeming me. He wants to. You are not just loved by God. Yes, you are loved by God. You are not just loved by God. You are wanted by God. Those of you watching right now, you are not just loved by God. He loves you, and the love that he has for you, you can't measure it. No measuring tape, no measuring stick, no measuring apparatus can measure the amount of love that God has for you. It's immeasurable, but it's not just that. God doesn't just love you, he wants you. Some of you have never felt wanted in your life. You may have felt loved, and maybe it wasn't even loved properly. It was just enough love to keep you around. Maybe that wasn't even love, but maybe you've been loved before, but you've never felt wanted. And I'm telling you, God doesn't just love you, he wants you. You are wanted by the one true God. You are wanted by the God of heaven and earth, the one who created the heavens and the earth. He's not too busy for use doing the rest of the world and taking care of the rest of the world. He's concerned himself about every little area of your life.
We're his children.
Yeah.
Well, brother, we're gonna wind it up.
Yeah.
So we got another exciting announcement. So next week, next Friday night, we're going to have Joseph's daughter-in-law,
Yeah.
Magdalene.